It's great to have Derry Cosgrave with us from Marmalade. When Marmalade first approached Small Business Australia and Business Advantage, we're thinking, well, this could be a juicy topic. I wonder what these guys do, Marmalade. And as we had a look at it and looked at who was behind the company and their whole approach to helping business owners, better understand, therefore have more confidence, and then ultimately improve the management of cash flow, we said to the guys at Marmalade, look, you need to come on and take us through this stuff, because we will have a bunch of small business owners that are very, very keen to learn about this. Derry was just telling me as we were just testing the tech that he won the jackpot. And that was initially being born in Ireland and growing up in Dublin and then in Galway. But the real jackpot in that he came out to Australia and went to Perth in his early 20s and then met the girl of his dreams, a young Australian woman. And they're married and both living up in Sydney and been here for a number of years. So, Derry, you really got the jackpot. But probably more importantly for all of us, and certainly for us here at Small Business Australia, is your background from a professional point of view in finance and working with small business owners. So I know that you have worked with pretty innovative finance startup in Prosper. You've also worked with some other financial organizations that provide finance to small businesses, and ran your own brokerage business where you help small business owners navigate, the complicated and complex supermarket of different financing options. And as you and I were just chatting before, very sadly, the major reason most small businesses fail and go out of business, and the major cause of significant stress and sometimes more serious health issues for business owners is associated with cash flow and associated with finance. So you've been involved in sitting between many different types of financial institutions and small business owners, and some that haven't made it, and some that have been able to reorganize things, and some that have been able to get the right sorts of things in place to go forward. The final thing I'd like to share with everyone is it's a bit over 30 years. And for those of you that are our regulars, I often talk about, was there something in particular at my time at Harvard Business School, which is a bit over 30 years ago, where I spent a couple of years doing my MBA. And I still recall our accounting professor on the very first day. And I had studied accounting at Melbourne Uni. I had worked as a tutor in the Faculty of Accounting, and I'd worked for KPMG as a young professional in the accounting area. But I still recall two things that the accounting professor said that day, and it sticks with me. And if I think about my father's own small business that failed as a result of very poor accounting and him having no understanding of finance and really being a struggling small business owner, he saw his accounts and profit was going up, yet he was borrowing more money from the bank all the time. And then when it was discovered that the accountant that he hadn't been actually making the payments to the State Revenue Office at a state level, and to the Australian Taxation Office, there was no option but to actually have to close the business down and put it into receivership. But the two things that the professor at Harvard said that stick with me to today was, there was a very famous bar called the Boathouse Bar next to the Charles River, and that's where we would all go and have a few beers after class. And he would say to us, look, you will never be able to buy a beer anywhere in the world with $10 of profit, but you will be able to buy it with $10 of cash. Now, that's 30 years ago. I know it's hard to actually buy a beer in most pubs for under $10 these days, let alone just find a basic beer, which is what I was buying back then. But, profit does not buy stuff for you. It does not pay you bills. And the other thing that he said, which, again, has stayed with me to today, he said, guys, you know what profit is? And we're sort of all there. We're in our 20s, MBA students. We said, no, professor, what's profit? And he said, profit is a pack of lies agreed upon by accountants. So with that sort of introduction and sharing with you some things that have stuck with me for more than 30 years now, I'd like to hand over to you, Derry. Thank you for getting involved and making the time available to come and share your knowledge and extensive experience in this area. I'll disappear from the screen and let you share yours, Derry, but thank you for being available, and we're really looking forward to getting into the meat of what you've got to share with us.
As Bill mentioned, I've worked in the finance industry for the past 8 years, and today's webinar is really important for myself because I've had thousands of conversations over those 8 years and with SMBs. I understand the needs of SMBs and the challenges, the many hats that they wear, and also their understanding of finance and accounting, and the reliance that sometimes they can have on advisors to assist them. But ultimately, I have supported hundreds of businesses with regards to cash flow solutions over those years. And I have spoken to many customers who have got a credit card, an overdraft, and maybe a couple of business loans. And what Bill touched on there was businesses who, might be turning a profit, but have got a huge amount of debt. So today's webinar is about really introducing Marmalade, a breakthrough product that really provides control back to SMBs over their cash flow, over their receivables, giving them control, something that they don't really have when you issue an invoice. So to give you a bit of background as to sort of who's behind Marmalade or how Marmalade came about, it's a very interesting story. Marmalade was founded by Luke Trickett back in 2019. Luke is married to Libby Trickett, a former Olympian for Australia, multiple gold winning swimmer. And when Libby finished her swimming career and decided to go into that professional speaking circuit, she was being booked to do speeches through booking agencies for sort of tier one banking organizations or accountancy firms. And when Libby would issue her invoice, typically it might take anywhere from 90 to 120 days to actually have that invoice paid. At the time, Luke was setting up his funds management business, so wasn't necessarily paying himself a huge wage and was very reliant on Libby's income, which was lumpy and sporadic. They lived off credit cards. And unfortunately, when it came to trying to get more sort of cash flow assistance, what Luke realized was that every product that was being offered to him was some form of debt, whether that was an overdraft or a business loan or invoice finance. And he thought to himself, how crazy is this that we have to get into debt in order to survive, when ultimately it would be we would be fine if our invoice was just paid on time. And Luke really held on to that pain in sort of 2012, 2013, and thought I might solve that problem one day, and decided that 2019 was the time to start of put a bit of a plan together. And Marmalade went live in October 2020. We're a world first invoice payments platform. And I'm going to talk about the product in a little bit more detail in a few more slides. Now, when we think about cash flow, the cash flow can be, I suppose the term can really be used heavily. We spoke about it numerous times already on this, and we understand that cash flow is really the lifeblood of every business. However, the term, I think, sort of gets talked about so much that we actually forget what it means. And for Marmalade, what cash flow means is it's simply put as the payment of an invoice. And the root cause of cash flow problems really originates around providing interest-free credit terms. So in business, if you are in that world of B2B, there is an expectation or a demand by your customer that you will provide credit terms, whether that's 7 to 90 days. But of course, this is really the start of what can become a negative cash flow cycle, whereby you will do the work. You've invested in the goods. You've provided the goods and services. You've had to pay for those goods up front, potentially, but you've certainly had to pay your staff or pay yourself. And then you have to wait to be paid. And that is where we start to feel a bit of pressure. Now, if we've got 1 or 2 customers to begin with, we probably can get by because we're using our own savings to manage our business. However, word kind of gets out that you're fantastic at what you do, the goods and services that you provide, and you build up a reputation. So what happens is word of mouth spreads and you start to become a bit busier. And you go from having 2 customers to 5 to 10 to 20. And what we start to see is that this cash flow gap just widens and widens and widens. The more invoices that you issue, the more customers that you have. And this creates that problem of I suppose waiting for your customer to pay you. And ultimately, your cash flow is somewhat at the mercy of when your customer is going to pay you. So you don't really have control over your invoices. And when you're waiting to get paid, well, can be a detriment to your business. And some statistics around that is that 50% of small businesses are cash flow negative at any point in time. 42% of additional cash would be available in their bank account if small businesses never had to wait for payment. So if you could imagine in your world where you issued an invoice on payment terms, and wouldn't it be lovely if your customers paid you within 24 hours, that you'd have that money in your bank account, which would be absolutely brilliant. 62% of businesses have their invoices paid late. And what we're seeing at Marmalade is that this is actually getting worse, right? So we have the data that supports that it's actually taking longer now than 6 months ago, 12 months ago for an invoice to be paid. You might be noticing that. One of the questions that I typically might ask someone when I'm speaking to them about Marmalade is, how long does it take you on average to have an invoice paid? And the response is, well, I provide 30 to 60 days, but that's not necessarily the right answer, because the answer really is actually looking at the detail on how long is it taking for a customer to pay. And I really implore that people go and look to see how long it's taking for their customers to pay, and seeing what that is on average, and how does that compare to 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, because this will obviously impact your business. Another stat that I haven't put on the screen there, but would like to share with you, is that 1 in every 2 failed businesses believe that late paying customers was the cause of their failure. And that's scary, right? So if customers were paying their invoices on time, I think we'd have more SMBs in business. Now, common cash flow mistakes. We've put a few items up here. I'll probably touch on sort of poor invoicing software. In Australia, we have the luxury of lots of technology providers, especially when it comes to invoicing. So whether that's Reckon, QuickBooks, MYOB, or Xero, who Marmalade integrate with, there's lots of great tools that are out there to help streamline the invoice process. I do speak to lots of SMBs who are yet to jump on to any of these products, and they are still doing things the old way by issuing invoices either on paper or doing up a Word document themselves and emailing it across. The issue there is that, well, the first thing, it's not very professional looking. The second thing is it's really easy to lose track of those invoices. And if we lose track of invoices, well, of course, then we're just going to lose track of the money that's actually owed to us. You can't survive that way. These platforms now have got great tools like invoice reminders, customer statements. It also allows your accountant or bookkeeper to really plug into the platform and assess where things are up to. So you really get your finger on the pulse when you're using these platforms. And I think it's very important that in this day and age that every small business is investing in technology, especially around invoice software. Another area that I find where businesses can be doing better is in that sort of debt collection and reconciliation. It's great that we issue invoices to our customers, and we typically hear that, hey, I've got great customers, they just pay me late. But if you don't have a proper collections process in place, again, this can really be at the detriment of your business, because if you're not following up with your customer and you're not doing it in a prompt manner, well, then the probability of actually receiving payment gets less and less as the debt or the invoice gets older. So we really need to stay on top of our collections process and having that in place. And again, using some of the reminders that the invoice platforms use. However, if something does start to go into that bad debt territory, sort of 90 plus days, what is your plan? What support do you have? Calling people again and again and again and hearing the same excuses really it's tiring. It wears you down. So it's really important to have that structure in place, that if an invoice does go overdue by 7 days, that you are sending an email, you're on a call. If you start to see that it gets a little bit longer, then look to what legal support you can bring in, providing a legal letter to help to assist with sort of the payment of that. And it just shows that you're not afraid to spend some money in your business, but using some support in order to have that invoice paid. Now, another area that obviously is sort of important to me and a huge area that I've obviously got experience with and I'm passionate about, of course, is around the choosing the wrong finance solution and relying on credit. Australian businesses are being supported more and more by finance companies. There was a gap, I suppose, left by the bank when it comes to supporting businesses and their cash flow. Ultimately, I suppose the first cash flow product that's probably made available to every business is a credit card. And the credit card I kind of refer to as a debt card, and I'm not talking about DEBT, but the other one. And essentially, the credit card is it's a mechanism that, pardon me, it's a solution that doesn't set you up for success. It can pretty much extract value very quickly because there's no protection. You're provided with a limit that you're allowed to spend as quickly as you want. And there's no mechanism in place that says that you actually have to pay it back, or you have to pay it back in equal installments over a period of time. It's just a minimum payment. And people get credit cards because of their convenience and the speed at which they can get them. And when people get a credit card, they have every intention, the best intention, to pay that credit card balance down to zero. Now, ultimately, at the start of a credit card, you'll typically spend and you will probably bring your balance back down to zero. But as you start to get into a bit more of a habit of spending on that credit card, that balance gets a bit higher each month. And the reason that you're not paying it down to zero is maybe because of you're not receiving your invoice payments as quickly as you'd like, or there's other priorities that are in your business. Now, you might go from using one credit card to two credit cards, or think about transferring balances, etc., getting a larger balance. Credit card companies are fantastic at marketing their product, and again, very easy and convenient to get. And maybe you decide to level up and go and get an overdraft from the bank manager. Again, the overdraft is very similar to the credit card. It's almost like a credit card on steroids, where it's a larger limit that's provided to you. And again, there's no mechanism to actually have to pay it back. So in my experience, I have met a number of SMBs who use credit cards and have an overdraft. And when I ask the question around, what's the balance, it's typically maxed out on the credit cards, and they are running their business on the overdraft. As you start to build some payment history in your bank accounts, and you're sort of 6 months plus in business, then that's typically when you can apply for a business loan. And again, you're just getting into more debt, very quick, very easy, just having to submit 6 months of bank statements in order to get that facility. And typically the lender will look to provide you with a top up every 3 to 6 months. So keeping you on what I refer to as this hamster wheel of debt. Now, look, there's good debt and there's bad debt. Okay. Good debt to me is investing money into an asset, something that can provide you with an ROI. And bad debt is typically borrowing money for cash flow purposes. We shouldn't have to borrow money if our customers were paying us quickly, or if we had access to the money that's tied up in our receivables. And so what Marmalade provides is we do the processing of invoice payments in the same way, say, Stripe process credit card payments. We also reconcile those invoice payments automatically in Xero and prepare customer statements also. And then we provide this really simple option to have an invoice paid early or in advance of the due date. So payments is all around providing your customer with more ways to pay an invoice. 98% of payments are typically in that B2B space are done through bank transfer. But of course, people want choice. And so Marmalade provides them with choice. They can pay an invoice through EFT, through credit cards, or through our direct debit. Marmalade is a free platform to sign up to. There's no cost in having Marmalade there. So we will process your payments, your bank transfers for free. We'll do your reconciliation for free, create your customer statements for free. So Marmalade is really about providing more options to pay an invoice, and processing payments is at the heart of what we do. One of the great functions of Marmalade and one of the real value adds is around our reconciliation. And so currently, when you issue invoices, you need to match those invoice payments to the invoice. Xero is there's a pretty handy tool in Xero which sort of matches them, but you still have to have a manual click the match button. So there is a manual requirement to do that. With Marmalade, because we're processing all of your invoice payments, we can see that the payment has been made. We can match that payment to an invoice, and we will do that automatically in Xero. So again, we're eliminating the time that it takes to do any payment matching in your business. And again, that's free of charge. So what we're providing you there is just free value that helps with your business. And that also allows us to prepare your customer statements as well. So we send customer statements out on the 6th and the 16th of each month. And it's basically a statement that goes out to your customer that shows them which invoices are due or which invoices are overdue. And that really allows you to stay front of mind with your customer. So your customer can't say, well, I never received the invoice, or I didn't know that money was outstanding. They receive that notification twice a month. We don't get involved in the collections process either. So we don't want to interfere with how you run your business. That was one of the reasons why we did our integration with Xero, so that you could it'd be business as usual. You don't issue your invoices out of Marmalade or anything like that. We're connected to your invoice history in Xero. What I'd love to do now is show you a demo of how Marmalade works with Xero, so you can see for yourself the simplicity of it.
And reconciling them directly in Xero, so your back office staff no longer need to spend any time doing this task, and giving you the simple option to have an invoice paid before the due date. To get started, all you need to do is issue your invoices directly out of Xero. Marmalade is connected to your invoice history. We can't see your accounts payable, your P&L and balance sheet, or your bank feeds. We can only see the invoices that are sent out of Xero. When the invoice gets sent out of Xero, we pull the information into the Marmalade platform, where you'll be able to see a list of your current or outstanding invoices, very much in the same way that you can see these in Xero. To have the ability to cash these in, I simply click on Dashboard. This will show me what my available cash in is, and I'll be able to see a list of my outstanding invoices, and I can filter those invoices from least expensive to most expensive. Our current pricing is between 3% and 5%. The invoice that I sent a second ago for $1,000 is currently available to me. There's a fee of $30.50 or 3.05%. In order to have this invoice paid, I just simply click on the purple Cash In Now button. That invoice will be paid by Marmalade. The funds will hit your account in 24 hours, giving you the ability to enhance your cash flow when you need it most. So you can spend those funds back in the business on day-to-day operational costs, or investing it into new technology, equipment, stock, or any other opportunity that may present itself.
Now, that was a very brief demo of the Marmalade platform. And again, I'm more than happy to provide a full demo to anyone who may be interested, and you'll have my contact details at the end of today's webinar. One of the things that people think when they hear cash flow or payment and an invoice is this is finance, this is a loan, this is debtor finance or invoice factoring, whatever it might be. I'll leave this slide here because it's very powerful to understand that Marmalade, we're not a finance company, we're not a lender, we're not providing a loan to anybody. We are an invoice payments platform, and we pay your invoice in the same way your customer will pay. So the money that you receive belongs to you. It doesn't belong to us. We will get their money back when your customer makes a payment, of course, in the future. So the money that you receive belongs to you. That means that we're not creating any liabilities. We don't sit on your balance sheet as a liability. But more importantly, it means that you're not applying for credit. So we're not looking for any form of personal guarantee, director's guarantee, company guarantee. We don't do any credit inquiries, so your credit file is protected. We don't charge any interest. We charge a one-off fee. And more importantly, when you do select an invoice for early payment and we pay you, we take on the risk associated to that invoice or the payment of that invoice. And when I say risk, I'm talking about the late or non-payment, so bad debt. So if your customer was to go into administration and they weren't able to pay the invoice, but we had paid you, well, then that becomes our bad debt. And we won't look to recoup any of those funds from you or ask for you to pay us back. We won't look to increase any pricing in order to make that money back. That's all included in that one-off fee between 3 and 5%. Now, your customers don't know if you've cashed an invoice in or not. So you do have that confidentiality. Yes, they will know who Marmalade are because we're an invoice payments platform. We process payments. Our name is mentioned. But we're not a lender with who get involved in the collections process. So that might take a little bit to kind of sink in, because I speak to lots of people and I kind of have to repeat that a couple of times. But again, the money that you receive belongs to you. We're not lending it to you. It's not on loan. And those other products that are out there, the credit card, the overdraft, the business loan, debtor finance and factoring, they are all loans. So you're essentially spending the bank's money or the finance company's money in your business, and you'll pay them back at some stage. So when thinking about Marmalade, know that it's a zero risk to your business. There's no risk at all. And this is a breakthrough way of being able to manage your cash flow, stay in control of your receivables, and run your business the way you want to. And now Marmalade is for, I've identified it's for 2 different categories of business owners. So businesses who currently use debt love using Marmalade because they're moving away from debt, getting off that hamster wheel. And then there's another category which is around businesses who don't get into debt to grow their business. So they believe that growing their business should be done organically. They want to wait for their customers to make payments. They want to build up a war chest of savings, and then they'll invest those savings back into their business. But of course, that takes time to build up those savings. And so Marmalade is really appealing to their values of using their money to grow their business. Marmalade, we do support the traffic management industry heavily as well. We are sponsors of the TMAA, and we've got a number of traffic management companies who are using our platform. This particular traffic management company based up in Darwin, Chris Boyer and his amazing team up there, they had used a lot of debtor finance in the past, and they saw the benefit of Marmalade because we were able to provide them with 100% of the invoice value. There was no security, so it tidied up his balance sheet, freed up his security. But he was able to use the money that was owed to him to invest straight back into his business. And with a lot of work available up in Northern Territory, he had the cash flow confidence to be able to tender for that work. And he's been able to grow his business significantly by about 12%. And he really just loves the fact that he knows how much money he can access, how much of his money he can access if he wants it.
I certainly found the approach that's being taken here very interesting. And I've got a couple of questions of my own first that I'd just like to confirm with you. So let's assume one of my companies is using it. And let's say it's, 3.5% is going to be the fee on the transaction. Then you have the risk of collecting that money from my customer, and you being Marmalade then do the follow-up and everything with respect to get that money from my customer?
So it's a great question. So yes, we do own the risk, but no, we don't get involved in the collections process because, Bill, you've got the relationship with your customer and you don't need Marmalade interfering with that relationship. You guys are the best people to follow up with your customer. So you follow up your customer in the same way you would on any other invoice. We do help support you, of course, by creating those customer statements that get sent out twice a month. but your day-to-day, your week-to-week collections, that's all your responsibility. Of course, if the debt starts to go really bad, and I'm talking 60 plus days overdue, then that's when we will get involved. We'll speak to you first, get a bit of an update from you, and then we'll look to get in contact with the customer directly. Now, at that stage, Bill, you're handing over that collections baton to us. You're not getting paid. You've probably stopped providing with goods and services a long time ago, and you'll be glad that now it becomes their headache. And we'll follow it down that legal route, and all legal costs are on Marmalade.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. So if I can just use my, more simple way of trying to understand it is, we can get paid earlier, right? We can select it, and as long as we're comfortable with the fee, within 24 hours, the money's in our account. Yep. We still do our normal follow-up process. So if we're using Xero, their sort of reminder system and stuff, we can do that. And at some point in time, Marmalade will come to my company and go, we need to take it over from you. We're going to deal with them. There's no need for my business to get a debt recovery agent and go through that process of a recalcitrant, creditor, etc., debtor, I should say.
And Bill, that takes time and money, that process, and it's really horrible. It's almost soul destroying for anyone who actually has to do that debt collection part of it. And for any business owner who is the debt collector themselves, they really feel like the wool is being pulled over their eyes. They lose a bit of trust in customers, and they feel like they've been taken advantage of. So how great is it that Marmalade will pay your invoice? The money is your money. You can sleep easy at night knowing you've been paid, and that if anything should happen to your customer after, that nothing will come back.
The next question is a technical one. You've mentioned Xero and Marmalade being, integrated. So in the jargon of IT for, all of our members, there's, an API in place between. But what about those businesses that are using MYOB or QuickBooks or Reckon accounting software?
Yeah, so absolutely. So we decided to team up with Xero in the early days just because of their market share. That was the first reason. MYOB, of course, has been around for decades, and they do serve a larger business size. And we really wanted to get into, the micro and the small of the SMB space. And so we decided to partner up with Xero. And now we are going live with QuickBooks next, hopefully by the end of the year. And we continue our discussions with MYOB. We're also looking to support other job management softwares like Simpro, which is heavily used in the construction space. So we will be going live with Simpro in a few months. But the mechanics of Marmalade and this technology that we've built with Xero, just to explain sort of the mechanics of Marmalade, it's pretty simple and straightforward. So when someone signs up to Marmalade, we provide them with a new bank account that is in their business name. So it's unique to their business. It's not shared by any other Marmalade customer. The second thing that we do, Bill, is we help them create what we call a branding theme in Xero. So that's Xero's language, a branding theme. They're almost like invoice templates. So once that branding theme is created, it's got the new payment details on them. So when you start issuing invoices after you've onboarded with Marmalade, they'll have the new payment details on them. So an invoice goes out to the customer receives the invoice, of course, and they make payment at some time in the future. The money flows into that new bank account, and that's when Marmalade process that payment. So we will transfer the money into their current transacting account twice a day at 10 a.m. and at 4 p.m. So the outcome is still the same. Businesses are still receiving their customer payments into their current transacting account. The money just flows differently. But of course, that allows us to know that the payment has been made. And that's what we refer to as processing invoice payments. So that's the mechanics of how Marmalade work. Again, not asking you to issue invoices through Marmalade. You still issue your invoices through Xero. We're just connected to Xero.
So, Derry, you mentioned then the need to set up a separate bank account that Marmalade will do. Yeah. Again, how much sort of time and effort's required from a business owner to, in terms of that happening?
None whatsoever. So we are able to create bank accounts as soon as signups happen. So there's no downtime in a small business having to set up Marmalade at all. Again, that is the benefit of integrating with Xero, and we don't want to create any disruption We don't want to create any downtime, and we don't want people to change their processes to suit our platform.
So let me, again, this is combining sort of question 2 with question 3 now. If I'm sitting here as an MYOB customer or a Reckon customer at the moment, we shouldn't come and talk to Marmalade yet because you haven't got those APIs in place.
Correct. Yeah,
right.
Be patient. Certainly feel free to leave your details with us, and we will put it into our CRM. And as soon as we have those integrations, then we will reach out.
Okay. And then with respect to Quicken, in terms of your technology product development roadmap, when can Quicken customers expect that Marmalade would be available?
Yeah, so with QuickBooks Intuit, we should have that by December, if not earlier. So certainly with, December is really upon us pretty quickly, but yeah, it'll be by December. One
of the questions I've been SMS'd is, this sounds all a bit too good to be true. Because it's not involving actually, a financial institution shoving more finance down the throats of business owners that, have got some confusion between profit and cash. Again, how is this business funded? Clearly, there's going to be some bad debts where you don't get paid, effort made in collecting. How do we just ensure that if we go through this process as a business with you, that you're going to be around down the track, given that you're only a couple of years old?
Yeah. So it's a great question. Thanks for asking it, Bill. Well, so Marmalade, we're a very well-funded business. Our founder, as I mentioned at the start, is Luke Trickett, and Luke has been running a funds management business for the last 12 years. And Luke has only invested into payment businesses, technology, financial services. So Luke has got a huge amount of experience in investment and has got investors. Right now, we fund everything through equity, but that will change as we continue to speak with the banks on some debt facilities. So yes, we might be coming into our 3rd year. And, one of the questions that I get asked typically, Bill, is around, the protection of my money. So what happens when my money is in that bank account of yours, Derry? Well, that money is held in trust. It's Marmalade Australia Pty Limited do not have any access to the money that's flowing through those bank accounts. So if anything should happen to our business, you should be rest assured that money is protected. It does belong to you. We understand, we're patient, right? We're playing the long game here. We're not looking to be a unicorn tomorrow. And that just comes down to Luke's experience in technology, financial services, and payment businesses.
The question is, when reconciling cash deposits, does the business owner have to reconcile the transaction to a Marmalade bank clearing account, or is the Marmalade account actually visible in Xero?
No, so the Marmalade account is not visible in Xero. So the bank account it's almost like a nothing account in the sense that money goes in, money goes out. So you don't have access to it in the same way you have access to your current transacting account, because simply the money goes in and then we transfer the money automatically at 10 a.m. and at 4 p.m. So in Xero, with regards to cash sales, well, look, you may decide to stick with your current invoice template or how you manage your cash sales. So we do have suppliers who issue all of their invoices using the Marmalade bank account when it comes to offering credit terms. But when it comes to cash sales, some people might just revert or continue to use their current process.
So again, I'm not a Xero user, but I'll go back to my old days as an accounting student. So in effect, the bank account of the business is still the bank account of the business, but rather than, let's say it was an invoice for $10,000, the fee is 3%, right? So I'm paying a $300 fee to Marmalade. Yes. In my chart, I'm going to see in my bank account that I've linked to my special Marmalade account, $9,700 is going to come in.
Correct.
And I'm going to have, so it's going to be revenue coming in, or will 10,000 be the revenue coming in with $300 sitting as a Marmalade invoicing expense?
Well, obviously $10,000 is going to be on your P&L, right? Because it's a sale. Yep. But as far as the realized money in your bank account, the physical money is $9,700. Now that $300 fee will be reconciled automatically in your P&L. So when you sign up to Marmalade, you choose an expense account, you choose an expense account. And so when that fee is reconciled, you can see clearly in your P&L, what am I actually paying for Marmalade?
Okay.
So all the bookkeeping and accounting work is done for you automatically.
If you don't have that already, Gary, what I think would be helpful to have available is a short little video showing someone who is not using Marmalade now, but using Xero's invoicing tools.
Yep.
You know, before and after effectively, and just when it comes to doing that sort of, you know, whether it's weekly, monthly reconciliation,
yep,
that a number of, you know, disciplined business owners do or have their bookkeepers do for them. Just you know, what do our screens look like before we ever heard of, let alone implemented Marmalade, versus what do our screens look like afterwards? That'd be really helpful.
Great feedback. Thanks for that, Bill. I'll make sure it's added to our product list.